The armistice was signed this morning. Everything for which America fought has been accomplished. The war thus comes to an end. Speaking to the Congress and the people of the United States, President Wilson made this declaration on November 11, 1918. A few hours before he made this statement, Germany, the empire of blood and iron, had agreed to an armistice, terms of which were the hardest and most humiliating ever imposed upon a nation of the first class. It was the end of a war for which Germany had prepared for generations, a war bred of a philosophy that might can take its toll of earth's possessions, of human lives and liberties, when and where it will. That philosophy involved the cession to Imperial Germany of the best years of young German manhood, the training of German youths to be killers of men. It involved the creation of a military caste arrogant beyond all precedent, a caste that set its strength and pride against the righteousness of democracy, against the possession of wealth and bodily comforts, a caste that visualized itself as part of a power-mad Kaiser's assumption that he and God were to shape the destinies of earth. When Marshal Foch, the foremost strategist in the world, representing the governments of the Allies and the United States, delivered to the emissaries of Germany terms upon which they might surrender, he brought to an end the bloodiest, the most destructive, and the most beneficent war the world has known. It is worthy of note in this connection that the three great wars in which the United States of America engaged have been wars for freedom. The Revolutionary War was for the liberty of the colonies. The Civil War was waged for the freedom of manhood and for the principle of the indissolubility of the Union. The World War, beginning 1914, was fought for the right of small nations to self-government and for the right of every country to the free use of the high seas. More than 4 million American men were under arms when the conflict ended. Of these, more than 2 million were upon the fields of France and Italy. These were thoroughly trained in the military art. They had proved their right to be considered among the most formidable soldiers the world has known. Against the brown rock of that host in khaki, the flower of German savagery and courage had broken at Chateau Thierry. There, the high tide of Prussian militarism, after what had seemed to be an irresistible dash for the destruction of France, spent itself in the bloody froth and spume of bitter defeat. There, the Prussian Guard encountered the Marines, the Iron Division, and the other heroic organizations of America's new army. There, German soldiers who had been hardened and trained under German conscription before the war, and who had learned new arts in their bloody trade through their service in the World War, met their masters in young Americans taken from the shop, the field, and the forge. Youths who had been sent into battle with a scant 6 months' intensive training in the art of war. Not only did these American soldiers hold the German onslaught where it was, but in a sudden, fierce, resistless counterthrust, they drove back in defeat and confusion the Prussian Guard, the Pomeranian reserves, and smashed the morale of that German division beyond hope of resurrection. The news of that exploit sped from the Alps to the North Sea coast through all the camps of the Allies with incredible rapidity. "The Americans have held the Germans. They can fight," ran the message. New life came into the war-weary ranks of heroic poilus and into the steel-hard armies of Great Britain. "The Americans are as good as the best. There are millions of them, and millions more are coming," was heard on every side. The transfusion of American blood came as magic tonic, and from that glorious day there was never a doubt as to the speedy defeat of Germany. From that day the German retreat dated. The armistice signed on November 11, 1918, was merely the period finishing the death sentence of German militarism, the first word of which was uttered at Chateau Thierry. Germany's defiance to the world, her determination to force her will and her Kultur upon the democracies of earth, produced the conflict. She called to her aid three sister autocracies: Turkey, a land ruled by the whims of a long line of moody, misanthropic monarchs; Bulgaria, the traitor nation cast by its Teutonic king into a war in which its people had no choice and little sympathy; Austria-Hungary, a congeries of races in which a Teutonic minority ruled with an iron scepter.